All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's 5 o'clock. We'll call this afternoon's meeting for the Clay County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, December 14th to order. Our first item is the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Do we have any citizens to be heard today? Citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda. Any citizens to be heard? Anything online?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, we will then move into employee recognition. We have one tonight, and this is a longevity award for 20 years of service for Leslie Whitty with public health, and Leslie can't be here today, so we do have a plaque and grateful recognition for her 20 years worth of service. And Kathy will send that with you, but did you want to maybe, you're going to be up here shortly, do you want to just come up and mention something about Leslie for us? If you want to just grab and you can just stay where you're going to be at for your report too, if you want to do that.
Yes, thank you. Sorry Leslie could not be here tonight, but she has worked for public health in a number of capacities. She works in our health promotion area. She worked for many years as a leader in our child and teen checkup program and really moved Clay County into the numbers where we are reaching a lot of children and reminders for getting their preventative health screenings done. So we were doing quite well in that area under Leslie's leadership. And she is part-time now and had accepted the public health analyst position. So she's in charge of doing all of our community health assessments, community health improvement plans, and strategic plans. So she's very busy in that capacity as well. So Leslie's a great asset, easy to work with, and we appreciate all of the things that she does for public health.
All right, thank you. All right, well, next we have a recognition of donation from the Scandia Lutheran Church, and that donation is for $50, and that goes towards the donation for Clay County work details. So we just want to acknowledge and thank the Scandia Lutheran Church for their contribution. We'll move on to the approval of the bills and vouchers.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross and second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Looking for approval of the minutes from November 23rd, 2021.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from November 30th.
Might as well continue. Move to approve.
Second motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. We will move into our COVID-19 update with Public Health Director Kathy McKay. Good afternoon again, Kathy.
Good afternoon, and thank you. In the beginning, okay. We'll talk through the data as we do every week. Last week, I did send the information to all of you commissioners and county administrator. So active cases have been fluctuating a bit. As we did see in November, they were at 523 on the 22nd. Then on the 29th, they dropped down to 386, and then 395 December 6th, so a little bit up and down. And then currently, the information that you have in front of you is so the December 6th, 395, and then December 13th, 378. And so again, we're a little bit up and down. We were still confident we're hoping to trend down a bit more in this fourth wave, but that's the numbers currently. We see the active cases in Minnesota, December 6th, 34,194, and then December 13th, 35,033. So active cases just up a little bit. In Cass County, December 6th, they were 825, so they were up quite a bit, and then the 13th now 697. And then in North Dakota, it's 2,833, and then December 13th now, this week is 2,236. So we're seeing, again, a fluctuation in some of the cases. The active cases by age, as we go through the age breakdown, we still continue to see the highest number in the kids and adolescents. As you can see, the 10 to 14-year-olds, 47. And then we see numbers, the 30 to 34-year-olds as well, 42, and the 5 to 9-year-olds, 39. So we are seeing some of the higher cases in the younger population. The cases per week, and you can see this is broken down a little bit more of overall cases reported since August, which is right around the time we were seeing that numbers climbing after the summer lull. So numbers dipped the week of November 21st, kind of Thanksgiving week, but then we saw an increase the week of 11/28, so November 28th. And last week, 175 cases were reported so far. And again, as we've mentioned every week, is that's a preliminary number until they catch up. So those are the cases per week, which we thought was a little bit easier to look at than this next slide, which is a little bit more detailed. And these are the case trends per week, which is a bit more accurate, but since the beginning of the pandemic in March 15th. So it's just a broad overview of, as you can see, the waves and where we currently are. So again, we're in the fourth wave. Haven't really sustained the downward trend, but we're certainly, hopefully we've reached the peak and are still going to see those numbers decline. Cumulative cases by age, and you can see again the cumulative cases, the 20 to 24 at the top, 14, 19, and this has been since the beginning of March. So total cases, 12,606, and that's the breakdown we look at every week for the cumulative cases by age. The next one is, as we follow all of the information here, we're watching the CDC level of community transmission. This shows in Minnesota, all but one county is in the high transmission level. So one county dropped down to substantial, and sometimes that will fluctuate, but the rest of them are all at high transmission. Here's our Clay County total number of deaths. We have 111 so far. Unfortunately, there's been 7 more deaths that have been reported since our last board meeting, so a total of 111 since the beginning of the pandemic.
Kathy, did those 6 all happen within that time frame, or is that the time when they
Not
reported?
Yeah, Commissioner Mojo, not necessarily, because some of that, there's some delay in some of those deaths tracking. Is that your question?
Right, just to look at that graph, it looks like that one week was particularly devastating.
Yes, it does. And sometimes it's not always that it's just within that week, but sometimes there's a delay in that reporting. So that could be very well the case. Hospital admissions, residents per week, so 8 admissions so far for last week, and these are the Clay County residents. So there's a graph of all those admissions for Clay County residents since March. And then we have hospital capacity information for our local health system. So we have Ascension, Sanford, and also the VA. So the staffed beds continue to be a concern as we look at this graph. At this point in time, there's a total of 4 staffed adult ICU beds available in Fargo and 1 pediatric ICU bed that's available. So statewide, in North Dakota, there's a total of 11 ICU beds for adults and 7 for pediatric ICU beds. So again, this continues to be an issue with not the number of beds that we would like to be seeing. North Dakota hospitalization data. So as we look at this graph, it remains about the same. There's a total of 165 patients admitted and 14 in the ICU, 2 current pediatric COVID patients that are hospitalized. This is the same graph we use all the time through the Sanford Health System, and it's updated as of December 7th. So we continue to see the same trends. And what is the most important is the number that we see for hospitalized in the ICU and on ventilators. And again, the majority of the patients that we see are not vaccinated. 35 of the 37 patients on ventilators are not vaccinated. So it's just really, showing the importance of, as we've continued to state all along, the importance of having your vaccinations against COVID. Our breakthrough cases, we see the breakthrough cases in Minnesota of a 3.513%, hospitalizations are a 0.142%, and breakthrough deaths, 0.025%. So still low numbers. What this is telling us is the vaccinations are really protecting people from having severe cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. So there's still a strong protection from that. Statewide vaccine data. So you can see people with at least one vaccine dose. We're seeing now the 3,692,000 at 70.8%. And then people with a completed vaccine series of 66%. And that's Minnesota residents 5 and over that are fully vaccinated. So 1.3 million boosters and third doses have been given statewide. And then on the bottom is the breakthrough of the percentages of each of those age categories as well. Total doses by public health. So we continue to provide vaccine clinics 2 to 3 times a week. So there's the total number from January, and so we've provided 18,417 doses of vaccine since the beginning. And then this last week, there's the number of vaccines that are administered, as you can tell. So 294 that week of the 6th through the 10th, 294 total doses. We're really seeing less and less people coming in for their first and second doses. The third dose, booster doses, are 204, so that's good. People are availing themselves to the booster doses. And then, as you can see, the pediatric doses, the 5 to 11 age group, first dose is 34 and second dose is 43. So we're providing vaccine clinics, which allows parents to come in. So it's after school, it's into the evening, sometimes till 6 or 5:45. So we're trying to meet the needs of people bringing in their children to get vaccinated. So we're trying to do them as often as we can, and that's working out pretty well. So I think there's many opportunities to get vaccine, and ours is just one of many, but they can get their vaccine through their providers, especially with the pediatric doses. Some of them are choosing to do that, and then the pharmacies are also still providing vaccines. So the message really is nationwide too, is to really, when it's time for your booster, get your booster doses. So the Moderna and the Pfizer, there's a different time frame when you are available to get your boosters, but we're really encouraging people to continue to get the boosters. We have the Omicron variant and the main message is continue to get the vaccine, continue to get the booster doses as CDC, continues to study this new variant. And so, it might be more easily spread than the original one, but it's still under study. We still have the Delta variant that's circulating as well. But right now, this is what we have. The doses, the initial doses of your vaccine, and then the booster doses. So it's still very important to get your booster doses when you can. So that's our message. That's the most important thing that we have to protect ourselves from the variant strains that are still circulating. In Minnesota, as you all know, that Omicron variant is in Minnesota. I'm sure there's many states that it's already circulating that's been, they've been able to isolate. The other states that they aren't quite sure of, it's just a matter of time before that will be circulating through. And so the message is really get your vaccines. Breakthrough cases can happen, but you're less likely to get severely ill or hospitalized.
Do you make home office visits? You talk to people who don't want to take it?
You know,
Got a
we,
couple names for you.
yeah, you know what? You can give them to me because we are very conscientious that there are some homebound individuals, and I have nurses that will go to their homes and provide the vaccine to
Glad
them.
to hear
Because
that.
they're homebound, and some are, it would just be really a hardship to get out of their home for multiple reasons. So I have nurses that are very willing. We take names, and when we can get out there and get to their homes, we'll do that.
I mean, we're getting down to that. We gotta tell people that won't go. We're getting down to, we gotta tell them, take the shot.
Sure. And we've had some requests, and we've been able to accommodate that. So we offer vaccines also to the homeless shelter, and we've been to some of the long-term care facilities that need to get vaccines to some of their new residents. So we're pretty mobile. We get out to those locations.
So just talk a little bit about the breakthrough cases. So the vaccines first started showing up in late January, I believe,
Yes.
February timeframe, and here we are in towards the end of the year in December, and the breakthrough cases in Minnesota are 3.513%, and that I think to me it's proving that the data that was told to us when these vaccines first came out was accurate.
Correct.
Because they never said that once you get the vaccine, you were going to be 100% protected or effective, maybe a better word to use, but they did anticipate that it'd be 90 to 95% for both the Pfizer and the Moderna.
Correct, yes.
And so with that much time involved and us being at 3.513 that did get the vaccine and still get COVID again, that's actually better numbers than what they originally talked about. So it's, from a protection standpoint, it should even give more credence to the fact that vaccines are working and you should get them.
Yes, very good point, Mr. Chair, absolutely. You know, when we talk about the influenza vaccine, it's the same thing. It's never 100%, but the people that are getting that influenza vaccine are protected from the severe illness and death, hopefully most of the time, so.
Yeah, and those with the vaccine, you got about a 99.85% chance of not being in the hospital,
Correct,
based on our numbers here.
that's right.
And you got about a 99.997% chance of not dying
It's pretty significant,
if you have the vaccine.
that's right.
Just a little extra. Anything else for Kathy today? All right, thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you.
So one last thing. On the, I'm starting to see more and more entities, agencies, school districts, and those types of things now regarding mask issues. Can we start looking at that again in terms of campus?
Yep.
I think we should be reviewing that.
Next week would be a good opportunity to review that. As you all could see, that Moorhead schools have made some changes, and we meet with the superintendents weekly. So we're aware of, they had some concerns even about quarantining, and that's changing in their school system. They really want kids to be present and not miss those opportunities for education. So we're aware that that's happening, and yes, we definitely Should talk about that next week.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on then to Sheriff's Office request. Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioner.
Good evening, yes.
Having me?
You have two items. We'll take the first one as the approval to purchase K-9 and expenses for K-9 handler deputy training.
Yes, so our current K-9 handler has indicated that he's going to be resigning from the department, which means we're going to have to retire his K-9. His K-9 had about a year left on the department. That being said, I reached out to a couple of local businesses. I was able to secure about $16,500 in donations. I thought I'd be coming to the board tonight to ask for a slight budget adjustment to cover the rest of the cost, but we did apply for a grant through the United States Police Canine Association for $7,500, and we were awarded that grant. Therefore, we will not need any additional costs for this. It'll all be covered through the donations and the grant.
Commissioner Ebinger.
This was a resignation, not a retirement.
This is a resignation. He has opportunity in the private sector to buy a business, and it makes perfect sense of, you know, what he's doing. It's unfortunate that he's leaving us. He's a good deputy, but he's going to buy his dad's business.
This wasn't something you saw coming then.
We
A
didn't see this
retirement
coming.
would have been something
Yeah.
you could.
No, I didn't see this coming. Yeah,
Do you have a replacement, or is that process still on?
that process is will be started tomorrow.
Is there any consideration on time and service and age and all that? I know you can't eliminate people who have an interest, but even a year is a pretty, I mean, you want to get as much as you can out of a K-9.
You do, yeah, and like I said, we did not see this coming. I was unaware of it. It's unfortunate, but we take a lot of things into consideration when we appoint that next handler.
And the exiting deputy will be taking the K-9 with him.
He will be, yes. It'll retire with his family.
Well, it should be.
Any other questions?
We don't need a motion on that.
I think we would probably still need the motion to approve the purchase of the K-9 and expenses, even though that we have
First
offsetting
is
revenues.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Okay, the next is approved to fill vacancies, two full-time deputies.
Yes, we'll have two replacement full-time deputies, one for retirement and one for resignation. There's a slight savings in both of them for 2022 budget. One is $2,500, the other one is roughly $3,400 in savings. One is going to be retiring February 18th of 2022, and the other is leaving the department January 3rd of 2022.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Here too.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross and second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, next we have consideration of resolution 2021-51 to sign into Minnesota settlement agreement regarding the National Opioid Settlement Agreement. And we all heard plenty about that when we were in St. Paul. And Steve, you can,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. As it was mentioned, this fall, we spent a great deal of time hearing different presentations on the opioid settlement, both this fall at our policy conference and also at the annual conference this past week. And so I just want to provide a little bit of an overview of the settlement process, background, talking about a little bit from the national lawsuit settlement information, the Minnesota lawsuit settlement information, then next steps, and then any questions and potential board action. So since 2000, more than 5,400 Minnesotans have died from opioid overdose. That does not include any non-fatal overdoses or the crisis impact that chemical dependency has come across on many of our families. In 2017, county attorneys from across the state of Minnesota announced a lawsuit against drug manufacturers and distributors for the public cost of the opiate crisis. Their main point was that they alleged fraudulent or downplaying the drug's addictive qualities and negligently distributing the unusual large quantities of those drugs. These lawsuits were something that we were seeing across the country. In 2019, we had two presentations at the board level, requesting Clay County to consider joining a lawsuit. After consulting with our county attorney, Mr. Melton, and getting feedback from the Association of Counties, this board determined that they would not join up with a legal counsel at that point, but would wait for further direction from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. A couple of years passed, but as everything continued on, in July 21st of this year, multiple state attorney generals reached a landmark $26 billion settlement to resolve a majority of the claims against the largest U.S. Drug distributors and drug makers. Minnesota had roughly 30 days to decide if they were going to opt in or opt out. On August 20th, Minnesota Attorney General's office did opt in to join the historic $26 million multi-state settlement against 3 pharmaceutical distributors and Johnson & Johnson. The 3 distributors would be looking to pay roughly $21 billion over 18 years, and Johnson & Johnson would be covering $5 billion over 9 years, with a majority of that coming up in the first 3 years. In the settlement piece, Minnesota's portion of that, depending on the number of entities that come forward, could have up to $296 million as a part of that settlement. So Minnesota has been preparing for this settlement for a number of years. Back in 2019, they passed some legislation that created a special opioid abatement account and a council to oversee the spending. At that time, what they did is they charged a fee to the opioid distributors and manufacturers, and I guess distributed that based on the level of need throughout home placements, specifically impacting child protection. And so this board has taken action on that. We receive any variance between $45,000 and $55,000, again, depending on the number of issues that we have related to opioids. And this board has approved to hire a social worker based on some of those funds. On December 8th of 2021, after working with the Minnesota Association of Counties, the League of Minnesota Cities, and a number of other agencies, including the governor's office, the Attorney General reached an agreement of how the funds would be distributed in Minnesota for those that chose to move forward with the settlement agreement. And so the findings of that were broken down into two factors. The local government abatement, one of the things that the Association of Counties worked a great deal on this, is trying to keep the funds as local as possible. And so in the findings of our agreement, the local government abatement will receive 75% of the abatement funds and paid directly to us. There won't be any administrative state funding piece that we'll have to go through. The funding will go directly to all 87 counties and an additional 33 cities with populations over 30 have filed lawsuits and or have public health departments within their city operation.
Cities over 30,000.
Cities over 30,000. The allocation percentage for each county and municipality were determined by council for the subdivisions on the national level. As part of this agreement, the state receives 25% of the abatement. Pursuant to state law, these funds will go directly into the Opioid Epidemic Response Advisory Council. There is going to need to be some adjustment to the state law. Currently, as I mentioned, the funding can only be utilized as part of child protection. And as part of the packet that you received, the Attorney General provided about 13 pages of what these funds will be able to be utilized for. In order to do that, we will require a law change to our statute, which which will be addressed early in this next legislative session. So if the statute were not to change for some reason, there is a backup settlement default, which 60% would go to the counties, 40% would go to the city, or excuse me, the state, with the counties receiving half of the state's 40% allotment. Again, at this point, the intention and the direction that we're hearing is that there is a great deal of support for the legislative changes. I think one of the things that I think we heard this week that this is a kind of a action in motion yet, and there's a few things that we won't necessarily know yet, but we'll continue to work with the state on that. And so change in legislation means there'll remain two distinct streams of opioid. I confirmed with Association of Counties this morning. We'll continue to receive the licensing fees of that $45,000 to $55,000 that I mentioned earlier, and we'll also receive our portion of the lawsuit settlement funds. So for us, what's the importance of participating? We have to make our decision by January 2nd. The Association of Counties has requested that counties make that decision as early as this week. The importance of this, again, as I mentioned earlier, is that we want to make sure that we get as many people nationwide as a participant in this settlement. The more participants we get, the greater the funding. Second, if we don't sign in on this agreement, the cities or the counties will not receive any direct settlement funds. Third, it's in order to maximize the settlement payments that come to Minnesota. Again, is similar to the national level. And again, finally, the agreement during the initial sign-on period maximizes the amount of funds available for any individual city or county. So kind of getting into some details that we did not know some of this information last week when we were at AMC. The Attorney General's office provided this information. Clay County has a multiplier. So in the event that we receive $296 million, we'd take that times 0.94 to the 13th position with a maximum eligibility amount of $2,890,686. Again, that funding breakdown isn't going to be something that's going to be equal over those 18 years because, as we mentioned, a portion of the Johnson & Johnson is going to come probably within that first 3 to 5 years. Just out of note, the city of Moorhead did qualify as one of the 33 cities that have population over 30,000, and so they're subject to receive their breakdown based on that multiplier. As I mentioned, there are a list of different usages that can be provided to use this money, and that the AG's office has laid that out. For this evening, if the board wishes to move forward this in signing resolution 2021-51, that will, in addition to that resolution, will also give the board chair, the county administrator, the ability to sign a memorandum of agreement with the state of Minnesota. And it will also provide an ability to sign a sign-on with the distributors and also Johnson & Johnson, notifying them that we're going to participate in that lawsuit settlement. If the county board chooses to not move forward on resolution or any portion of that, the county would not receive any settlement funds. If you wish to receive settlement funds, we would have to continue to provide our own legal team and also cover the costs of the fight to move forward to get those funding dollars. And with that, I would yield for any questions.
When this information first started coming out regarding lawsuits, there was a presentation given to our county board at the time from a law firm that wanted us to join in into a joint action. And at that time, we elected not to do that. We elected to wait and see what we as AMC counties would do, as well as the state of Minnesota. I think that was a good choice, as we can see now, to not go out on our own. I'm not sure what those folks that were out on their own are going to get, but I think this is a good way for us to proceed. we did look at one, like I said, we did look one time at going at it on our own, and that was probably not a good option. And this is a good settlement, I believe, and I think we need to give some credit to AMC and to Julie Ring, the executive director, for the work that they did in obtaining 75% going directly to counties. I think that's been a job well done on the part of our association. And I would certainly support any motion to adopt Resolution 2021.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Ebinger.
I move that we pass support of Resolution 2021-51 on the Minnesota Settlement Agreement on National Opioid Settlement.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ebinger, a second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, or that resolution, I should say. All right, next we have a request at advertising for bids for power plant generator project. Joe Olson, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Board. So yes, I'm requesting permission to go ahead and advertise for request for bids for the backup power. It's the generator backup power for the power plant in the Family Service Center. So basically what I would do is start advertising on the 16th and run that 3 weeks and open bids on January 11th, and then hope to come back January 18th with a recommendation. Project was the one that was initially approved through ARPA funding, and we have an estimated engineer's report around $275,000 is what our engineer is saying roughly, but obviously RFPs have to come in. Just requesting to start that process, or to advertise today. Oh, and we've ran this by the building committee. So,
Building committee recommends.
recommends, yep.
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Mojo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next, we have Highway Department. Approval of resolutions 2021-52 and 2021-53 for county and township deficient bridge prioritizations.
All right, this is our annual deficient bridge list. This is the one that sets in motion some of the funding that, as we get it through, whether it be town bridge funds on the township resolution or bridge bonding and state aid usage for the county and county state aid roads. So we did accelerate this by about a month or so because we wanted to get the North Broadway Bridge included in there so we can keep moving forward on proposed removal plans for that jointly along with the city of Fargo. So we did make the improvements according to, or some additions according to our most recent bridge inspections from our bridge team leader and team assistant, as well as we did add the North Broadway structure to it.
Thank you. So we do these in two resolutions. 2021-52 would be for our township bridge prioritization list.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve Resolution 2021-52.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mojo, second by Commissioner Gross. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Resolution 2021-53 would be our county bridge.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-53.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Mozo, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have an approval for final contract voucher for SAP 014-608-013.
Right, this is the final voucher approval, closing out our grading on County Road 8, 608-13. This is a project that didn't go so well. RJ Zarrells was the contractor on it. Glad to get it done. I think it did turn out well, and it's going to hold up for a long, long time. It just costed way more money than we ever planned. Final amount to be approved is $3,160,847.34.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. And lastly, Dave, we have the approval to advertise for CSAW 1 grading and bridge replacement.
Right. If Justin wants to just give a little brief update on it and let you know where we're at with this one.
Yeah, so we talked about this project a little bit at board before, so we're requesting approval to advertise. It's the grading of CSAW 1. It's from CSAW 20 to CSAW 26, as well as rip out the deficient bridge and replace it with a box culvert. And it's a really narrow road currently, and we're gonna be widening it with this project and paving the following.
And if you recall, this is the one where we had one resident where we
That is correct.
agreed to avoid a eminent domain.
Yep.
meeting.
Right. It's kind of been on our list for about 3 years. Once all the right-of-way was acquired, we moving forward on it. There's some utilities that have to get moved this spring yet, but kind of looking forward to it. We haven't done a grading job for a few years, so it's going to be a really nice project. We are setting aside some additional funding that the county was luckily, able to get. We've got our county state aid regular funds, which comes through the gas taxes. We are also using some of the wheelage tax dollars that we collect every year. We're going to allocate some of those funds to help pay for this, as well as we do have, like Justin said, the bridge bond funds to remove the little bridge up on the north end there, so.
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to advertise. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Gross, second by Commissioner Kaylee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Justin. All right, next we have a request approval of resolution 2021-54 for submittal of 2021 voting equipment grant. Lori.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I'm looking for permission to apply for a voting equipment grant. You did this earlier, or either earlier this year or at the end of last year. We purchased 18 assisted voting machines, and we need to buy 12 more. And they came out with a new grant, which is what I was hoping for. And so just looking for approval to apply for that.
Sounds good to me.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kaylee, second by Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right.
Thank you much.
Good luck. All right, we have a review STS program viability with upcoming retirement of crew leader.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Afternoon, Janelle.
I just wanted to give an update. Mark Dibble has submitted his resignation, and his final day would be January 6th. Currently, our STS program has been trying to thrive with community members as well as people from the jail, but because of COVID-19, we're kind of struggling with participation and kind of filling the crew. I feel like as we venture outside of COVID-19, I don't know when that will occur, but I think the numbers are improving. And so I'm asking of the board to perhaps suspend the program, the contract, and that we revisit it come spring. I think some of the townships definitely utilize our crew and have benefited from that. Some of the data that I submitted as well would show that it is cost effective for the townships and those partners. One of my biggest areas that I like to advocate for this program is that it is restorative justice in nature. And so many of the court's sentencing options are sanctions and punitive, whereas this is one of a very limited amount of options that are restorative in nature. So if we could build upon this, I hope to do so. And I think I've spoken with some people about Clay County right now is being looked at for dosage supervision and trying to incentivize early discharge. And I think that this may also play into that. And so I think it might be beneficial just to suspend the program and revisit it and see how we can possibly come up with a better approach and get a bigger size crew involved and really look to see what the county's needs are and how we can do some projects within the county.
Well, first off, we want to talk about Mark. Mark's did really good with that program for a lot of years, and he didn't, there's an awful lot of areas in Clay County that benefited from his leadership in that regard, and personally, I think we want to thank him for his service and congratulate him on his retirement. I hope he goes on to fun things, but we certainly want to acknowledge Mark for the excellent work that he did. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I was also going to say that about Mark. I can say that one of the most frequent calls that I get as being a commissioner is from members of the community that have called the work crews in and had work done, and they're so appreciative. And I think it's important for not only the inmates to be able to work off their fines and fees, but certainly for the organizations that hire them. As a little bit of a historical piece, several years ago, we did talk about the elimination of this and in what it would mean for budget constraints. And because of the input that we received from the community, and Mark felt it was really a viable program that we needed to continue with. I do know from hearing that there's been concerns because of the challenges that COVID has presented to the work crews and Monty's crew, as we refer to it as well. So I think I appreciate, one, that you're coming forward and saying that maybe this is an opportunity to look and make sure that we're using dollars wisely. And not sure if it would be appropriate then for the PIC committee to maybe talk further through it as we get into the spring, what makes the most sense. But certainly I know the community appreciates it, but I think that it doesn't make sense to continue to spend a certain amount if it's difficult to get folks to do the work.
Commissioner Ebinger.
Yes, as you referred to the dosage pilot program that we are one of 3 counties being considered, a whole lot of that, from my understanding from the meeting, was that it depends on community programs to get people channeled into programs just like this. I missed our last meeting because we're at AMC, but I'm very positive on our participation in that, as a lot of people have been, simply because it focuses our resources on where it needs to go. If we don't end up with the dosage pilot program, do you see restoring this program in the short run?
I do. I think it's very beneficial for the people that take advantage of it to reduce their debt, pay their fines and other fees through this program. There are numerous people. We do sanctions conferencing where they don't do a formal hearing with the court, but they may have had a violation, and in lieu of doing some time in custody, they'll join the crew and work off they'll be on the crew for a few days. That way the individual doesn't lose their employment, they stay in the community, they're still connected to their family, but they still had a consequence for a violation that may have occurred. So it still is a valuable program for that aspect. We just have transportation issues. Right now, there's a lot of, even in our work environment, we have some staff that it's allergy season and you don't want to contaminate anybody else. So there's, everyone wants to stay healthy, and that's just kind of what's going on in the world right now. And so I think with the resignation of Mark, and, I don't know how long that would take to backfill it. I think that the county itself would be in a different situation come spring. Jail population, things like that, that we would know better what our population in custody is, as well as in the community, because this program takes both entities.
Well, I just feel strongly that if we can fold this into the dosage pilot program, that's great. If not, it needs to be restored in some fashion, because this is a very viable way of dealing with people who are on the low end of the scale as you identify in a dosage, but still need some consequences attached. So
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we review this program at this time and suspend it until we can review it, look at funding, and look at how it's going to work with the dosage project.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Abinger and a second by Commissioner Mojo. Just to comment, the funding portion of this that the county has done in the past is still in our 2022 budget. And for right now, it can stay there, but it's, as the motion reads, right now, we would just be suspending it until we learn more. Right?
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I would just want to make sure there's no other questions. All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, we will move on to committee reports. I know we're going to have 2 weeks of reports, and we have our truth and taxation. I just want to comment regarding the AMC conference, maybe because we could spend a lot of time talking about that, but if we can maybe concentrate on the individual policy meetings that we attended for now, that would be helpful to keep things moving along. So I'm going to start with, I start last time. Commissioner Kaylee, would you like to start today?
Sure. Wednesday, December 1st, I attended the Moorhead City Planning Commission. Had a couple things that we approved. There was a request from Corsmell Funeral Home to put in a dynamic display sign on the street. This would be highly regulated with how quickly that sign would turn over, but there are similar signs along there, so we approved that to go to City Council for their approval. Then we also approved the Days Inn redevelopment tax increment financing plan. So that's that Days Inn hotel that's been vacant for a long time. It has been purchased by a developer. It's going to be raised, and then a 120-unit multifamily building is going to be put in there. And then we just talked about the 5-year capital improvement plan. And then I went to AMC, and my policy committee is Health and Human Services. We approved all of our amendments, and I had spoken about those in a previous report, so I'll cut mine short there.
Does that conclude yours?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gross.
On November 30th and December 13th, we had 2 meetings with Detox. We're working and plan to do something with where they're located over on the 2nd floor, so nothing is really in for sure yet, and nothing, I mean, we're applying for some grants and stuff and trying to get some other money. I'll let our county administrator discuss what he wants to present on that. But we hope to do something with the place over there. December 1st, had a building improvement committee with the dental place on, I think, second floor, excuse me, I'm sorry for my voice. Second floor is being worked on. As you can see, as you walked in the fourth floor here, they're improving on the courtroom. And also they're gonna be doing some tile projects in the courthouse. Partnership for Health, or SHAC as they call it. The one thing I got out of that, I finally found out what it is. It's State Community Health Services Advisory Committee. Probably you knew that, but I didn't, so that was a highlight of that meeting for me. The area check grants have been changed to proper. They did an update on their finances and they found out that the grants, some of the grants aren't being charged to the proper accounts and they're gonna work on that. A lot of not problems, but something they have to approve on dental access, the dental access programs. People can't even get in there morning. There's a waiting list and they're not even taking anybody on the waiting list. So there's, they gave a couple of cases where people have been waiting over 2 years already to get on, and so they're trying to improve on that program. MRC, I didn't go down there, but I did do virtual on that. Main thing I got out of it that they're trying to raise dues in there, but that didn't pass. And they're also trying to get more lobbyists to help out with Dan, so he gets a little bit more help. And they're trying to get more membership. But the second part of the meeting, I sort of missed out on with the fact that the sound system couldn't understand it. Probably those of you that are there can give a little bit better report on that. Beyond the yellow ribbon, looked to me that everybody, all the guard and members that were there, most of them are reporting that they're getting ready for Christmas programs for kids. So that was what most of the meeting was on. Next one was the PIC committee meeting. We had today before the meeting, there was discussion on jail administration, correctional officer. We're also looking at how to probably staff that place a little bit different, so they have more administration on for the shifts. And they got they're going to have interviews for the diversity and ethnic community coordinator. Highway tracking we had just about an hour ago. That was, we discussed the North Broadway Bridge and 11th Street. Excuse me, my voice is going.
11th Street underpass?
I'll let that on for you to gift, and I'm sorry, my voice.
That's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes, that's,
Steve, are we dedicated to 6 PM on the truth and taxation, or? Okay, all right. We are, rather than, if we can wait on the rest of these, as part of our requirement, we have our truth and taxation public comment period is on, and I will ask our administrator and Lori Johnson. Do you want to come up, Lori, or do you want to just see if we have any questions?
Was this an available Teams meeting? Was there an online option for this?
We did not have any requests for teams.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I am going to ask for Steve to give a presentation on our 2022 budget and proposed property tax. Keep in mind that this Truth in Taxation is about the budget and the county spending. This is not about valuations of properties. That is a process that is handled, I believe it is in May, is that correct?
Starts in April and
Starts in April and concludes in June, I think. Okay. All right, Steve, do you want to take away?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you're aware, certainly aware, this process started back in June with our departments receiving their packets. They brought those packets to Lori and myself. We went through those line by line and then ultimately brought them to you for a presentation and for your comments and directives. On September 21st of this year, this board signed Resolution 2021-43, setting the preliminary 2022 levy, which came at 4.3%. At Truth in Taxation, again, we're presenting tonight based on that information. There have been a number of adjustments that we'll talk about later, but for the purpose of tonight, this presentation will be based, the information will be based on Truth in Taxation. At any point during this presentation, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and I'll try to pause occasionally to allow for any further questions. All right. The first document in your packet is a summary of our 2020 levy by fund. I don't necessarily anticipate going through this. We just went through this here about 2 weeks ago, but really a lot of the information that we provided here is going to be talked about in greater detail as we move through the document. The second page that you have addresses the Clay County tax levy for 2022. The dollar amount here requested is what we will be asking the citizens of Clay County to contribute. And the total dollar amount this year is $38,713,927. As you can see, that levy is broken down into 5 distinct areas. General revenue fund, which is $25,401,670, or roughly 62% of our budget, or of the levy. Social services was $11,142,795, or 27%. Road and Bridge is $3,797,647, or 9.3%. Our debt retirement is $326,255, or 0.80%. And our building improvement fund is $45,560, or 0.11%. Through the tax collection process, County Auditor Lori Johnson allocates the tax dollars to the appropriate funds. And does anybody have any questions on the tax levy? The second graph that you see has to do with our expenditures. As you can see, one of the expenditures for 2022 proposed are $101,955,826. Again, this document breaks down the 11 categories where those are. When you look at our expenditures, the majority of what we have here is fixed costs. And then again, one of the most important pieces of that fixed costs are our staff, and with each of these funds, a significant portion of that has to do with those fixed costs and our employees. In the general reserve fund, we have $32,873,041, or 32% of the total expense. Social services, $25,209,761, or 24%. Road and Bridge is $16,163,501, or 15%. Public Health is $7,907,379, or 7.76%. The Juvenile Detention Center is $7,349,577, or 7%. Solid Waste is $4,224,382, or roughly 4%. Our debt retirement, again, is $4,172,361, or 4%. Our internal service is $2,278,521, or 2%. Our Family Service Center is 1.6 million, or roughly 1.6%, and our building improvements, again, are 50,000, or roughly 0.05%. Are there any questions on expenditures?
Steve, maybe if I can just make a comment. So the 101 million that we see up there in terms of expenditures, that obviously doesn't match our levy because there's a significant amount of those dollars that are pass-through dollars from the state and federal government that are programs that we administrate on their behalf. So for the public watching, that's why you see a difference between the levy amount versus the total expenditures of the county. And there's probably some public health money too that's also works in that same way, so.
That is true, Mr. Chair. We are essentially in addition to the federal government, we are essentially an arm of the state as the county, and we do receive those pass-through dollars. While we certainly have received additional federal dollars through programs such as ARPA and CARES, we do continue to see some impacts on the budget, the COVID-19 pandemic in both public health, social service, the county attorney's office, juvenile facilities, and the detox. Is there any questions on the expenses?
Any questions? I see none from the audience either.
All right. The next page that you see is going to provide you a levy history over the past 10 budgets. As you can see, over the last 10 years, our levies have ranged from 3.53% in 2014 to 7.09% in 2007. With the average of the 10 years at 5.17%. Yeah, and I think it's of note, I think Mr. Chair noted earlier last year that if you recall in 2020, we did have a market study that was implemented, and so that had an impact there. That's why you see that increase. The proposed levy increase without growth is 5.53%, which is consistent with what we've seen over the last 10 years. I think it's important to understand that the list of this information doesn't take into consideration new growth. Clay County has been fortunate to continue to experience ongoing growth of new construction, generally in that 1.15 to 1.25 percentage over the last 10 years budget cycle. And so this year we have a percentage of growth of 1.23. So that takes that 5.53 down to 4.3 of what we spoke about earlier. I think another thing that's extremely important for our board to understand for our citizens to understand is this board doesn't take any increase lightly. It expects a great deal out of its department heads as we go through each of these budgets. But one of the other important things is that this board has always been consistent in those levy increases from the standpoint that we don't see spikes in that piece. And so I think, again, this shows the good stewardship that our commission has had with the tax dollars of our citizens. And at the end of the presentation, I'll show an additional document that really supports that. Any questions? All right, our next slide provides the county budget history going from 2022 proposed through 2018. Again, if you take a look, 2022 is up in your left-hand corner. Again, it provides your revenues. The revenues, again, to the point of Mr. Chair earlier, is we have a total revenues of $48,612,936. In our expenditures, again, we have $101,955,826, which gives us a deficit of $3,342,890. Again, I think it's important for our citizens to understand that Clay County utilizes internal service as a part of that. So rather than make a one lump sum purchase for a $200,000 piece of machinery, they save that over the life of that project or that piece of equipment, for example. And so we save a portion of that each year. And so you'll see That way allows us to minimize the spikes, again, that we have to have in our expenditures. And so that's been a positive way of budgeting. So any questions there? All right, we've spent some time over the last couple months reviewing the expenditures and revenues. When it comes down to this piece, we really try to focus on our expenditures, excuse me. And so in your packet, you will have a area that is highlighted. But I'm just not going to go through each of these, but I'm just going to touch on a few of the different the areas and maybe provide a little bit of insight of the increase or the decrease. In elections, the county auditor, Lori Johnson, we don't have elections every year, but she does put away dollars each year, regardless of whether or not it's an election year. With elections coming, it's expended in 1 year, and so there you'll see the 25.85% increase. The ground and building is an increase of 14.17%, as we've talked about. We've added a government center. We've added the DMV, and there's some additional costs that have happened there. Planning and zoning is your next highlighted area. There's a decrease of 8.35%. If you recall, last year, the board approved an additional $20,000 be placed in that budget for a comprehensive and transportation plan that's has been conducted this year. That's no longer in next year's proposed budget. Our dispatchers portion had an increase of 6.67%. In addition to the dispatch services, there's also a cost to the CAD MRS management there included that. The juvenile center saw a decrease of 9.16%. The juvenile center has a 2-year look back that based on usage, it's adjusted. We've saw maybe a small lesser amount of usage in Clay County, but what we have seen is a larger increase of our non-members. Non-member usage, which has been a benefit to not just Clay County, but all of our member counties as part of the juvenile center program. Public health had a decrease of 13.35%. I think one of the things that we noticed there, one, we have increased revenues with COVID. There's been some grant opportunities or some funding opportunities that have increased that. MinCare also had some additional dollars that were added there, or MinChoice, right? And so that was the designated the areas there, more revenues as a whole. The next item is Metro Council. The Metro Council basically has 2 different items. Their overall operations and overhead, which we are part of the MetroCog piece where there's a 20% local match. And there's also contracted planning service for any additional consulting services for specific projects for that upcoming year. This year, there are currently no contracted planning services. There were a couple different programs last year, and so subsequently, we see a 32% decrease this year. Unallocated general increase, we saw increase of cost to our MCIT insurance plan. We had planned increases in debt retirement at 100%, still listed in here at the time of establishing the levy, or preliminary levy, and so that again will be an adjustment that we'll talk about here downwards. If you recall, the county fair appropriation went up 17% this year. In 2020, we were able to pay a portion of their allocation with ARPA funds, and so that portion, with the additional request this year, shows that 17.7%, and so it is pretty consistent, or it is consistent with the new requests that they've made in previous years. The Minnesota Rural Caucus, we did see an increase from a 2,100 to 2,900, and that's solely population-based. They have a system set up with the Rural Caucus that once you reach different categories of population, you pay a different flat rate, and so we are now at that larger rate. Road and Bridge, when you flip over onto the back page here, we saw an increase of 15.87%. Again, that's really tied to what we talked about earlier, to the 5-year plan. And so, again, Clay County receives state and federal dollars to complete those projects, and subsequently is connected to those increases. The juvenile detention section, the non-secure facility, there were some adjustments to their staffing plans that allowed for 11.02% decrease in their salary. And also, solid waste management had an overall a change of 77%, but if you recall, last year we had a cell construction that we had roughly $2 million for a new cell out in our landfill, which is not there. I would note that for this year, you'll see an increase in solid waste. One of the changes that Kirk and his staff have done is they've begun to internal service for some of their items that normally they had not done. And so, again, I think a good thing for further planning. Does anybody have any requests on any of the things that I mentioned or any of the items that we did not address on this form?
Any questions? Steve, can you go back one slide for a minute, please?
This one or?
That Clay County budget history. I just want to make clear something here because I haven't seen this page before. And you could look at this and you could read that we budgeted to spend $3,342,000 more than we had revenues for. We did not do that for 2022. And the same would be, if you look at it, that means we would have had a deficit of 17 million in 2021. That never happened.
No.
So I just think if somebody were to get a hold of this report without some further explanation here, I just want to point that out because I would dispute that we
Yep. And
had a $17 million deficit.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chair, that went to my comments earlier for our citizens of the internal service piece. Covers a significant portion of 2022, and again in 2021, we had the funding for the resource recovery facility as a part of that $17 million, and so in addition to the internal service. So you are absolutely correct that we are not deficit spending.
But according to this, 2021 shows that we had expenditures of 110 million and revenues of 93. In anything that deals with the resource recovery, did we spend that much money, or did we
We budgeted for it.
budgeted for it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The next item that we'll address is the real estate tax projections. And I think the important thing to understand that as we move through this document is this shows a comparison from 2021 if the property value of homes at each of these levels remain flat. We know that we're fortunate to live in an area where our property values generally, most of the time, it's viewed as positive, but that we see increases. And so it's important to understand that the example that we have provided here today is based off the City of Moorhead property. Again, Lori and her staff can provide information from any city, but from a standard practice, we've used the City of Moorhead as the example. This document, as you can see, provides examples for homes priced at value of $150,000, $200,000, $250,000, and $415,000. And the information stops at $415,000 because that is where our market value credit ends. And so if you take a look, historically, we've talked about the $150,000 property during this presentation. And so if you take a look at the highlighted yellow area, the first area pertains to the county. The net change is at 2.53%. So the average citizen on a $150,000 home will see an increase of $16.49 based on this budget. The second item addresses the school. The school district has an actual decrease of 8.61%. And so that would be a decrease of $66.67 per citizen on a $150,000 property. The city or township had a increase of 5.25% or $29.76. The EDA this year is a 18%, 18.56%, or $3.36 per customer, and the watershed has 79 cents. And so kind of in summary, a citizen in the city of Moorhead who owns a property, has property value home of $150,000, again, assuming no changes from last year, would actually see a decrease in their taxes this year of $16.26. And again, as you go down in each section of 200, 250, and 415, you can see what the proposed changes would be. That would be similar in each area.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Steve, I think obviously Moorhead is the larger population center of Clay County, so I understand why you pulled this number. You know, and I think for the public's perspective, sometimes it's nice to hear what the other cities and school districts are doing. There are building projects happening in the other school districts. I'm not sure if it's helpful for us to have an average of what everyone's seeing between districts and cities, but you know, I know Moorhead's percentage levy was 0 or close to, wasn't it? So I think it is not necessarily the norm of what the rest of Clay County is seeing.
I can certainly work with the auditor in future presentations to provide additional information.
Thanks.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to continue?
Our next piece is a summary of estimated market value and looking at the last 18 assessments. Again, if you look at 2021, the estimated market value of Clay County total is $7,209,669,700. Of that, tillable land is $811,125,700, and that's a total of 25% of our complete estimated value. With residential land and buildings of $3,858,539,200, or 53.5%. These total categories together are 78.6%, with the remaining 21.4% attributed to commercial properties. If you take a look at our property, our estimated values both for tillable and residential, they remain very steady since 2014, when we saw an increase, starting in decrease of property values of tillable land. And so I would note we've begun to see some increased prices in acres per land, and talking with Nancy Gunderson, if that were to continue, we would certainly probably see some estimated market value changes for 2023. So.
Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. Steve, this is probably more just editorial comment than anything, but I think having two commissioners, having this be their first hearing like this, and the public, I think it's important for us to see what the values in Clay County have been over the last 18 assessments, and where we see growth and added value. I know that we often take every year take the new construction piece into what our total would be. But moving back a few slides to our levy history, it's easy to see that the levy history has expanded to a total much faster than our values have in terms of new construction. And I think that's where we as a board, it's very hard to weigh wants and needs and do that carefully to not stifle new growth. And it's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for every department, but specifically when you see that the levy just in the last few years has gone up substantially, and not in the same do you see the growth in the values.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. The last thing that I want to share is kind of the document that I touched on a little bit earlier, and I think it does go to, kind of what Commissioner Mojo's comments just were. I think that, again, providing excellent services and amenities to our citizens, Clay County is extremely important, but also doing so in a responsible manner has been a number one goal of this board. Making sure that we're establishing a fair and equitable levy is stressed each year to us, and in turn, we pass that on to the department. And again, making sure that any increase is not taken for granted. Earlier this evening, I mentioned that I just plan to provide a document that captures the outcomes and benefits of consistency, I think, in levies. I think it's one thing to say that the board is working toward that. I think it's another thing to be able to show that. And so today I have a slide that comes from the Minnesota Auditor's Office. And again, it looks at Clay County as an individual and ranks us in both in revenues and expenditures. And so I think that just like that, I won't go through each of these, but just touch on some of the important or main topics of importance. I think when we look at net tax levy, and again, I will note that the auditor's information is always 2 years behind. And so the first area I would like to touch is net tax levy. If you take a look at that, the per capita is $506.01 for Clay County residents. That puts us number 76 out of 86. And just to be clear, 71 out of 86 and 71 on the low end. Charges for service, such as recorder's office, planning and zoning, fees that we charge. Again, that is, we could argue, a cost to our citizens. We are 86th out of the 86 counties reporting. I know our departments do continue to evaluate the fees that they charge, and we've made some adjustments this year, but just to note that we are at the bottom there. Total current expenditures we are number 80 out of 86. And I think to note, even with our most recent projects of the Law Enforcement Center, Correctional Facility, and Juvenile Center, our total capital outlay is 84 out of 86 out of our counties. And so I do think, like no one likes to see increases. I think what this does show is, as we talk about great deal throughout this year, Clay County continues to be one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Minnesota, not just a metro. And you have a very challenging job to figure out where those limited resources go. And I think what this document continues to show as a board, you continue to make sure that you value those dollars, and you do great things with those. So with that, I would yield for any questions.
Commissioner Kaylee.
I do notice on this page, Steve, that we are 3 of 81 on public safety. That seems awfully high. What's that about?
So public safety does have to do it would have to do with our correctional facilities. It would have to do with our juvenile centers, our detox, our law enforcement. And so you're going to see, from 2019, you would see some of the projects, the cost of the projects of law enforcement and the correctional facility there.
Isn't that saying we're spending more than
we're spending in that
78
area?
Other counties?
Yes. Which, yes,
safety.
we are top. We're top 3 there.
Well, that means we're take public safety seriously. Commissioner Ebinger.
Would that factor in, or not factor in, any additional funds we have from the juvenile facility? We're looking at what was expended, not necessarily what was.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, revenue on that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Any other questions? Does that conclude your presentation?
Mr. Chair, that does conclude my presentation.
All right. And so I see I don't see any public wanting to comment here. We have a lot of staff here that would have been willing to take questions regarding certain areas that they are responsible for. We will then, on December 21st, have before us a final budget presentation, and we are anticipating making a couple of changes. Is that correct?
And if we have time, Mr. Chair, I do work with Lori and on some possible solutions for you, for your consideration, for direction for next week, if I can hand something out.
Yes.
I think while Steve's handing that out, it's important to note that even though members of the public are not here, our department heads stand ready to answer any questions on budgets. If you go to the Clay County website, not only are there budget documents there, but the contact information for all our department heads.
Thank you, that's good information. All right. Steve, you want to just quickly go through
Sure.
this?
At our November meeting, we talked about a number of things, and one of the things that this board asked was to go back and look and see if there were any other mitigating factors that we could do to offset the levy that was proposed in the preliminary levy. And if you take a look on the back sheet, in meeting with Lori and reviewing, going through our budgets again, we were able to make a few adjustments. There were a couple increases that were offset, but just kind of go through this as an example of what we could potentially bring forward next week. We went back through and looked at payroll deductions. Again, we were able to find an additional $44,300. Based on the increased assessor position from a previous board action, there was an increase of $8,779. The sheriff's office retirements that we've been dealing with here this fall, we'll see a savings of $56,050 from the preliminary levy. We did find out that we did receive some additional 911 fees. And that totaled $74,362. This board took action a number of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I believe, on the increase of correctional pay, and so that did have an impact of $76,214. One of the things that as a board you spoke about last night was, or last time we met, was the removal of the Ignite funding. Initially, Ignite had the FM Chamber had requested $50,000. This board had put $25,000 in the budget, and at our last meeting on November 30th, you has indicated that you would be willing to take that out and look as ARPA as a potential funding resource for that. And the last item on the list would be a decrease of VSO insurance of $8,800. That would give us a total of $123,599. If you turn that over to the front page, looking at the summary of levy, Lori had made the adjustments based on that. That would take our levy down from 5.53% down to 5.01%. And with our new construction growth of 1.2%, that would drop the levy from 4.3 to 3.82%. With that, I'd yield for any questions.
Questions tonight? We might have further discussion on the 21st, but thank you for the updated information based on what we've been discussing recently, so.
Thank you.
I think that we finally seeing a change from the preliminary over in the past. All right, thank you, Steve. And with that, then we will continue with our, for the staff that's here, thank you for being here, willing to be here after hours to take any potential questions from people. I don't know that you really want to hang around and listen to our committee reports, so I know that our administrator probably asked you to be here, but I'm suggesting maybe you want to check out. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Commissioner Mojo, we're ready for your.
Thank you. 2 weeks ago, I attended a detox planning committee meeting. We continue to look at ways to address the needs in that growth area, hoping for some serious recommendations coming out of that committee soon. I also attended the Minnesota Rural County Caucus meeting. We had significant platform discussion. The 3 areas of interest continue to be rural broadband, maintaining the regulatory certainty of public waters and the public waters inventory program, and talked about the lobby work group in terms of their government affairs presence. At the AMC conference, I attended the Extension Committee meeting. We had a presentation from Extension on areas in which Extension is continuing to help address the workforce needs in Minnesota. also helped us to understand the current workforce that is out there and the challenges that those trends are presenting in terms of recruiting, retaining workforce. The AMC conference had Environment and Natural Resource Policy Committee discussion. I have given the updates on those platforms at previous board meetings. And then the only other thing I wanted to talk about is I appreciated the wide variety in presentations. Sometimes it seems that those breakout groups are siloed in terms of more specific to one way or the other, but I really felt that there was a wide breadth of presentations and was honored with the opportunity to attend that conference. I think that's beneficial to us to maintain connections on a statewide basis, but also to have our department heads present that were, I think it's very pertinent information that we can take back. Last week, I also attended the Metro COG Executive Committee meeting. We talked about COLA considerations for the employees and in terms of, it's funny how the threads of all of our committees really tie in together, specifically with the workforce challenges and recruiting and retaining. I also attended a detox planning committee meeting yesterday, continuing the work that 4 or 5 years ago we picked up, really did start to address the needs of the detox facility in Clay County. As we all know, there are some challenges to that, and think that there's some exciting opportunities on the horizon for that. Yesterday, I attended the Transfer Station Construction Committee meeting. We do have a recommendation for the generator needs of that facility. I believe our administrator will continue that discussion. But also things are really trucking ahead there. I believe the building will start shipping the 3rd week of January. Upwards of 18 semi-loads worth of building will be brought out there. So it's really exciting to see that. And then this morning, I attended the Red Board Committee meeting. They did invite legislative representatives, both House of Representatives and Minnesota senators were present to hear the plans that the water projects, or that they have for water projects, and also feedback in terms of what they see possibilities for the surplus, and in terms of making substantial improvements to infrastructure and the like. So that does conclude my report.
Thank you. And just briefly, before we go to Commissioner Ebinger, back to the AMC, I had asked to kind of keep tonight to the policy issues for tonight with the truth and taxation. I certainly didn't want to prevent any commissioner from talking about any breakout sessions that you attended that might be worthwhile information. I would only ask that maybe we could include that next week if you care to report on any of those breakout sessions. I was just trying to keep this moving along for tonight. Commissioner Ebinger.
All right, on the 30th of November, I attended virtually a CJ Criminal Justice Advisory Board meeting involving the dosage project, the pilot project that Clay County, along with Wright County and Mille Lacs County, have been asked to apply for. A very interesting presentation. I had the Director of Field Services from the DOC, Alan Godfrey there, along with a number of people from the Center for Effective Public Policy and the Carey Group, presented this potential project for our county. Dosage probation is basically focused on medium and high-risk offenders, where the resources of probation are directed towards them. The lesser offenders, you have other restorative projects you can work them with. This is going to depend on a fairly good level of service provision within the community. This is a program that's being developed and being worked on. There was a lot of positive input on this, and I think they're going to move ahead with it. But again, it's a project that's underway in development. And hopefully we'll be able to get a offer of a pilot project from the state on that. On the 1st of December, I met with Joe Reso and Commissioner Campbell to discuss the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC issues we've discussed in the past. some of the concerns Minnesota stakeholders have. There was suggestion that sometime in the near future, we get the stakeholders together from Minnesota and have a meeting and discuss where we want to go with the EDC. On the 2nd of December, I virtually attended the first part of the Diversion Authority Finance Committee Lunch and Learn. I had a conflict partway through that, but got some good financial practices information on the authority. Commissioner Campbell was there in person, maybe can elaborate on that a little further. I had to duck out early to go to an EDC Executive Committee closed meeting on discussing the Executive Director's contract. On the 5th of December through the 8th, I attended the AMC Annual Conference. We attended, Commissioner Campbell and I attended the MCIT annual meeting. They elected 2 members to the Board of Directors. We had the Public Safety Policy Committee meeting. There were no additions to our issues that we want to go forward with, and I have discussed those in past meetings. Thursday, the 9th of December, I met with Tom Iverson, who's with this agency group that's overseeing the strategic plan for the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC. We had a meeting on issues involving strategic planning, and that completes my report.
Thank you. All right, my report starts on December 1. We had a building committee meeting, which Commissioner Gross, I think, did a really good job on explaining that, so I'm not going to go into any more detail there. We did meet, again, I did meet that same day as with Commissioner Eber, with Joe Rezzo from the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC, and one of the things that we talked about there that needs to have some attention drawn to it moving forward is in the state of Minnesota, the Department of Economic Development, Employment Economic Development is a critical agency for us to be able to have for our metropolitan areas within our county and our county itself. And it's difficult for the EDC. They're not even recognized from DEED because they don't have a actual presence in Minnesota, and particularly in Clay County. So when we go in terms of funding for them in the future, and even starting in 2022, I certainly hope that we can give some direction that we want to see some office presence here on this side of the river, so that they can better utilize DEED as potential opportunities for us here in Clay County. So I know Dave and I, we've been talking with Joel about that, and I certainly think that moving forward, I'm hoping we can make it part of our agreement with them. So then on the Thursday the 3rd, or the 2nd, we had our Clay County Joint Powers Board, and basically that discussion primarily was finalizing the intergovernmental retreat. Those were the main issues of focus there, and there is an established program sent out, and I don't know if it's been mailed out yet, but if not, you should see it very shortly with the program and the date and the registration process. I also attended at noon that day the FM Diversion Authority Finance Luncheon, as Commissioner Ebinger discussed, and it was nice to see some additional breakdowns regarding the financial matters. That's kind of up my alley. I didn't seem to get too bored over it, but it was, when you start talking about $3 billion versus what we talk about here at the county budget, it's a significant project. Again, I also attended the AMC conference. We left Sunday, came home on Wednesday. I will report the The policy committee that I serve on is Transportation and Infrastructure, and I did also attend the MCIT meeting that Commissioner Ebinger, as a delegate, I represented us there. In terms of the policy committee, probably the most significant issues were we had a member, Serge Phillips from MnDOT was there giving us the federal infrastructure bill overview of potential things that are going to be coming from that. And there's going to be some significant dollars coming to the state of Minnesota. There's going to be about $288 million. Now, this is federally, I think, overall, but there's $208 million going to be available for underserved communities. I think that's kind of a good thing. I know what's going on. There's going to be $300 million for bridge money, and then there'd be no local match required for those types of things. Safety, $300 million over 5 years, and that's going to cover technology for speed enforcement. Man, I can't even read my own writing. So 121 in resiliency, that's healthy streets and reconnecting communities. So broadband and equity, mass transit, there's going to be $820 million in that process for mass transit. And there's going to be another $298 million for airports in Minnesota. So just a heads up to our communities that have airports, if they have issues there, including Moorhead's Airport, maybe they want to check into those potential funds. Then on the 9th, I attended the Lakes Country meeting. I serve on their audit committee, and we received the audit presentation, and they got the kind of glaring report from the they use the private auditing firm of Eide Bailey, and they did receive a very good audit report. There was actually no recommendations for corrective actions. On Monday, I attended the transfer station construction meeting, and Commissioner Mojos gave a good report on that, so I'm not going to add any more to that. Then today we had personnel issues committee meeting. There's a couple things I do want to talk about there, and Steve will follow up. As you know, those of you who had attended the AMC conference, we learned at the AMC conference that our jail administrator had submitted his resignation. We had Steve and I had a conference call with him while we're in St. Paul, or in Minneapolis, and trying to see if we could change his mind. And we learned today that he would be willing to stay on for a short period of time, but he indeed plans to leave. So with the process of moving forward, there's some recommendations, activities, and there's going to, I think Steve can touch on that, and I think next week the sheriff is going to come forward with a advertising proposal to fill the position, and we're going to be asked to have a salary range that could be incorporated into the ad. So we can get into more details on that next Tuesday. So it's unfortunate that we're going to lose Justin there, but he's made up his mind. He's going to move on. We had a significant discussion regarding our MEND contract, and the contract is going to be up in September. So the PIC committee thought that it might be in our best interest to maybe put out an RFP, maybe the first of the year, so we can start getting some information that takes some time to deal with, and all indications are we're going to see, certainly see a difference in what we had been paying versus what any new contract would be based on what other counties are experiencing right now. We had talked briefly about, what that could be in terms of costs and how we would pay for it after we've already had have our levy done. And if you recall, I mentioned that we had significant savings from payroll. And I know Commissioner Ebinger, you had said you'd like to see a total thing, that there's also other costs involved. And we had a good discussion about that today. And even when you take into consideration the overtime paid and the amount of out of placement out of county that we're going through right now, they all agree that there's going to be substantial savings that can help with those issues. We'll get into more details on that, but it's based on we had a really good conversation on that today. Yes.
Does the request for proposal on a medical for the county jail or county correctional facility, are we also doing that with the juvenile facility?
We will want to incorporate them at the same time. Yeah. We had some discussion about the furlough program moving forward, the per diem mileage rates and all that for 2022, and all of those were recommended not to change. Of course, the mileage rate in our policy states that it's whatever the federal rate is. So with the furlough program, we did make a recommendation that the minimum amount of furlough should be 8 hours. Before the previous one, it showed that they could ask for 1 hour of furlough. As little as 1 hour of furlough, and we just felt that just could be just too cumbersome and hard on even our supervisors to have to be tracking that type of furlough, and that was, speaking from on that, I never thought that it was ever meant to be for a 1 hour at a time deal. So, and Frank, you've been on it for a long time too, and so that's one recommendation we're going to be, to change that to a minimum of 8 hours furlough. Other than that, and then we did get a report on the applicants for the diversity and ethnic community coordinator, and Darren has looked through that, and there still is a significant amount that meet the criteria. So I think Commissioner Cayley and Commissioner Mojo, you're going to be asked to review those with the idea then to determine how many of those you want to actually have interviews with. So that's coming up soon. Okay, is that enough? Yes, highway tracking. I didn't report on that yet. And you did, didn't you? So we did talk about the Broadway Bridge, and the one important thing there was when we did our deficient bridge deal, we added the North Broadway Bridge. Our 5-year plan, we did it on our outline shops. There's some concern about in-floor heat and what that might do to the total dollars that we had set aside in the bond for that. So we're looking at some different options to make sure that we can stay within that bond amount. We might ask for alternative bids with and without, and whether we might do 2 buildings now and 1 later. All those things we're still reviewing. The 5-year plan, we also got to look and maybe a little bit of warning signs regarding the CASA Project 52. Right now, there's a potential for that running $700,000 more than we originally planned in our 5-year plan. But he also talked that right now there's upwards of $1 million in potential federal aid revenue coming in to help offset that one. But then there's a couple other other CASA projects that might also be. But it's we just determined it's too early to determine what to do with that. So that concludes my report. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On November 30th, I participated in detox planning discussion that's been addressed. The first, we had a county management meeting. We discussed COVID-19 updates, 2021 budget, upcoming board meeting this evening, TNT, and department updates. That afternoon, we had a meeting, building committee, a meeting which has been addressed by Commissioner Gross and Commissioner Campbell. On the second, we had a joint powers meeting, which has been addressed. Again, our intergovernment retreat will be January 28th at the Law Enforcement Center, so save the date. That afternoon, I talked with Derek LaPointe on a series of economic development issues in Clay County. On that afternoon, I also attended the Dilworth Community Center State Bonding News Conference with Governor Walz there. Dilworth received a $975,000 federal grant to do some work on their community centers, which will become their fire station. And so total cost of that project will be $6.5 million. So a nice addition to the community. City of Dilworth and our sheriff, who was acting as the police chief, or excuse me, fire chief, did a nice job that day. On the 5th, I attended prior to the AMC conference, participated in the MACA conference with other county administrators. We discussed levies, opioid settlement, ARPA, and workforce issues. I attended the AMC conference on Monday through Wednesday. I'd like to thank the board again for that opportunity to attend. It was good to see other people and kind of talk with our equals in other counties again about things that are happening in their areas. That afternoon, I met with our local Fargo-Moorhead administrators. Again, we talked about workforce, ARPA, opioid settlement, so that was a good conversation. We, on the Thursday, I met with Darren in the sheriff's office on a series of HR issues. That afternoon, I met with Joe, update on the projects that he's working on. The 10th, we spent a significant portion of time preparing for this evening's TNT and both opioid settlement preparation presentations. Yesterday, again, we met with the detox committee, heard from Troy Amundson and Kathy McKay on some facilities needs. I think there's going to be some decisions and directions that this board is going to need to provide Troy moving forward, and so we're certainly looking forward to getting your input. We had a owners meeting yesterday for the resource recovery facility, as Commissioner Mojo mentioned. Over the last month or so, we've been working with construction engineers and Burns and Mack in regards to what type of or if any kind of generator backup power we need at the facility. It was determined that in part of the initial planning of that building, there was not a backup power source. And so we spent the better part of the last month looking at different options. Yesterday, we were presented with four separate options, and the committee essentially will be bringing forward a recommendation for that next week. It's important to the board to understand, is I think we heard yesterday that generators are out about 42 weeks. And so we're at the point of the importance of making a decision, because if we don't make the decision and we hit our project end date, it's going to be pretty close there. So we want to make sure that we have that ordered as soon as possible. Again, the MEN contract, just to participate in the PIC and the highway that's been addressed, I'll just say with the MEN contract, the juvenile center also is up this fall. And so it would make sense for both contracts to come up at the same time. As Mr. Chair mentioned, in talking with other administrators across the state, those who use MEND or companies like that are seeing significant increases coming out of this contract. And so I think that we can anticipate some of those challenges coming forward. And so I think with that concludes my report.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Gross. He gave a good talk at the conference, too, by the way. Okay, Brian, do you have anything else, Dan? All right. Colleen, anything? Just want to go home, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Darren, you want to stay for a while? Okay. All right, we returned.